Pat. It's great to see you. I haven't seen you or talked to you in a while. It's great. It's great to have you back.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so today's conversation is about, I hear a drum roll, streamlining and simplifying the finance operation. To get the conversation started, let me ask you this. Is that what CFOs say to you when they come to you with a problem? I'd like to streamline and simplify the finance operation. Or do they have a particular pain point that leads them to that outcome?
Yeah, usually by the time you're looking at software vendors, you have a pretty serious pain point, at least one, and if not many, that you're trying to solve. And usually you're trying to do that because internal IT hasn't provided something in the past for you, or you're just not a priority like the rest of the business is. And yeah, by the time they come to us, they're usually saying things like, we don't want to manually enter data any longer, or we know we're losing money because we found $500,000 in excess spend through one vendor last year, or it's usually some combination. Well, my favorite so far has been a CFO that said, "We have a great operational process. We're really happy with everything in the company. We have 100% AP turnover on our team." That's probably my favorite that we've had so far. So we've had a few good pain points.
I guess that CFO really likes to live on the edge. I mean, likes change, obviously, a lot of it. 100%.
I'm not sure he liked it as much. Great customer now, by the way, and what's nice is not as much turnover, which has actually been good for them. But yeah, I think he was certainly frustrated.
Yeah, I would say so. So let's unpack those pain points, because obviously the outcome is what we discussed at the top of the conversation. But the one CFO who said, I found all of these savings that I could have had, but didn't, after the fact. So what can be done to make sure that, in present time, in the current year, he's not looking back to say, gee, I missed that $500,000 or whatever that was.
Yeah, well, I think you look at the way that finance teams typically solve problems. It's not really technology first, people second. It has historically been people first, technology second, and then they'll get the process right. Hopefully they get the process right, and then they select vendors that sort of fit into that process. And I think what we're seeing now is a willingness to really reach beyond that, because reliance on the people has become more challenging. Certainly over the past couple of years, people aren't coming back and there's fewer of them. Imagine that. No one wants to graduate with a degree and then look at an invoice all day long. Shocking stuff, right? Yeah, totally shocking stuff. So we start to see that it's the change. Even that CFO that I mentioned actually had a great comment. He's like, how fast can you implement this? It's now the conversation shifted from can you do these things to how quickly can you do these things, so I can take action right now, and so I don't have to look back and say 23 or that this year was a tough one because we just didn't get something implemented in time. So we are seeing a lot of people asking for how quickly can you get this up and running.
And do you think that that's because of the changing economic uncertainty, or just the general realization that we can get some low-hanging fruit without really having to do, a broad sweeping change, and this is the easiest and fastest path to get that done?
I think it's a combination of things. You had a really high growth period in the economy, which means a lot of inefficient ramp.
Right.
And usually you apply people to an inefficient ramp. You're just like, okay, let me hire enough people. If you can't hire people and you have the growth ramp, and now public companies aren't being valued on growth any longer, it's not the primary metric to growth, it's net revenue. So now you're thinking about, how can I grow gross margins, net margins, and how quickly can I do that? So you're seeing CFOs start to worry about, what does that eventual outcome for their business look like? And especially if they're public companies already, there's no outcome for the business. It's, you have to operate in a far more competitive environment. You have to be more efficient to do it. So I think that realization's hit pretty hard at the moment.
Well, when we've spoken before about the duplicate invoices, I find that still shocking that it happens at such a great degree in large. I mean, maybe it isn't so shocking in large companies that may have disparate systems and things are lagged. It's not real time, and you don't have visibility into how things are processed. But that also seems to be, an area of immediate opportunity to, do what you said, which is let's make sure that we're making the most of our systems so that we can avoid doing things that truly cost us.
Yeah, and it's amazing about the duplicate invoices. It's the tip of the iceberg, really, for large corporations, because you would think that you're able to catch the duplicate invoices because you spent so much money on SAP, or you spent so much money on, whatever reconciliation package, and it turns out it's just not working. And that's because duplications aren't just when the invoices are identical. That's a fairly easy thing for a technical person to solve. But it's really about the individual line item level and processing each line item. And historically, it's 800 people at an outsourcing shop is going to look at line items against contracts for you and audit those and reconcile those. But that doesn't happen fast enough. Payment terms are coming down. You have to pay your vendors faster and faster. You don't want to be a consistent late payer because you want to be able to renegotiate in a stronger position the following year. And so, yeah, the duplicate invoice product that we have, it's up and running pretty instantaneously. And it's amazing just how much money it saves, because we do look beyond the invoice number, the purchase order number, sort of the standard things that duplication services would look for if they're run by humans, as an example. And so by removing the people from that workflow, not only are you finding a lot of those duplicates, but you're incredibly efficient at finding those duplicates in real time. So you don't have to overpay and then beg for your money back, which is sadly the standard operating procedure.
And that takes a long time if you are lucky enough to get that back. I mean, I guess you have to get it back at some point, but depends on who you've paid.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it depends on who you've paid. If there are international payments, you certainly don't want to make those late and then beg for money in a clawback period. It affects cash flow. It is really shocking, though, if you are a CFO and to think that you've outlaid millions of dollars in capital.
Right.
And this is still happening to your organization, and you have 30 people and it's still happening. And it's because you've grown so quickly, which is a good problem. You've grown so quickly and so inefficiently, effectively from an operational perspective. Now you sort of have to claw back all that operational debt, and you really it's not a human scale challenge. That's something that's much better for machines to handle. And that's really where we're supporting customers. Day one, finding duplicates. I mean, we had a customer come on board and they said, we only have about 500 invoices a month, and they were through 1,000 by day number 3. Invoices, and it was far larger of a problem than they even realized. And that's because you don't have enough people to look at it. You don't have enough people to reconcile it. And reconciliation engines really they're pretty basic, right? Out of the box reconciliation engines on ERPs are pretty basic. And so you're just not finding and keeping up really with how vendors are interacting with you. Sort
of a good news, bad news scenario for the CFO. Who's like, yeah, great, but oh wow. Oh wow, that's what we used to do, and that's how much it cost us.
That's right. And all their FP&A models are still built on growth.
Right.
Which isn't the key indicator any longer.
So when you think about these platforms like yours, what does it is doing something to solve a problem, but what does it replace?
Yeah, for the most part, our product comes in and either replaces a sort of a subpar workflow that was just implemented a long time ago that no one's really happy with. That's pretty common. Number 2 is it replaces anyone that's outsourced digitization of documentation, or even has it insourced with sort of low value add work. So a lot of copy and pasting, a lot of duplicate entry and things of that nature. So it kind of replaces that sort of cumbersome process. And then finally, it really replaces the teams of people that you can't afford to hire in the first place.
Right.
For the most part, we don't go in and show up and they don't let go of people because we exist. It's that they couldn't keep up with the volume. Their current team couldn't keep up with the volume. So they would have to have like 5-10x their workforce in order to keep up with the volume. So we replaced the need to hire that 5 to 10 times the amount of people that you had to at the beginning of the year.
But you've also given those who are there different jobs to be done, correct? And that also creates, a better work environment for those who are supporting the business.
Usually we find that we've given them their actual jobs back. Right? That's the problem that's happened in finance generally, is that finance is like, we've hired AP team members, we've hired AR team members, we've hired auditors, FP&A, et cetera. And now all of a sudden we have to hire 50 AP people because we can't pay our vendors on time. And now we're asking people that weren't doing payment remittance to do a bunch of payment remittance work and to learn that practice. So instead of that, we classically, several of our customers have told us, oh, this is great. I can go back to doing my actual job that I was hired for, which is high value strategic work, versus looking at 2 sheets of paper and trying to determine what this contract really meant at the time, which is a very common use case for us.
I think obviously for the business, this is, creating efficiency, streamlining and simplifying, but it also gives them better control of their cash. And I think as businesses are looking for ways to, optimize liquidity and to manage flows better, this is a big part of that. If they are mismanaging, not because of mismanagement, but because of not having enough people and good systems to help them not mismanage. I think that's obviously a good thing for this person sitting in the CFO seat.
Absolutely. Treasury, it's so funny that AP and Treasury are totally different places most of the time. And now with a system like ours, you're immediately having an impact on Treasury, on cash flow. The best way to manage spend is to not overspend in the first place.
Yeah, right.
So solutions that are inherently preventative are going to offer a better return on investment than those that are based on clawbacks and sort of legacy operational procedures.
How are CFOs rethinking the office of the CFO when you talk to them about, the things that they're doing, the problems that they see, but also the opportunities they have in not just automating what exists, but in really rethinking how those workflows really happen?
You think about what drives the finance suite. Historically, the finance team has looked at inflation and said to the supply chain team, you have to find X% cost reduction in order to beat inflation. This has happened for the last many decades, right? This has been taking place. And now the finance team is looking within saying, how can we become a profit center? Like, what work can we do to generate more cash on treasury, to think more like a business unit, to be more entrepreneurial within those organizations, to be business driven? And I think we've seen that across the board, actually. Every CFO that we've spoken to, they always start the conversation by, we already reconcile all of our invoices. And our attitude is like, great, you don't have a problem. Let's see if we can save you $1 million a year. And if we can save you $1 million a year, there's something there. And then once they look at how much money we can actually save them, they immediately think, how much more can you save me? Right. Can you save me money in these areas? It turns out it's not just reconciliation. They start to think more about adjacent problems. And I think they're less fearful of finding problems in their organization than they used to be. There used to be a lot of, for lack of a better word, machismo around the finance suite. And I don't think that exists as much in sort of these sort of situations that they're in right now. I think it's just straight to cash. How much money can we save? How can we generate better returns on our cash flow?
I remember, well, we have a very nice CFO, but they definitely put their foot down. Like, you don't want the CFO, you don't want to get an email from the CFO. It's like, oh, right. That's right. It's not a good email, but it sounds like the role of the CFO is very strategic and now part of the conversation, the business conversation, as opposed to the department that tells you the things you can't do.
That's right. Yeah, I think, historically they did provide risk assessments. It's kind of like legal and various other departments as well. But I think now the finance department uniquely is actually in the position in the trade flows. They're in the cash flow, and they have the ability to evaluate spend generally and to prioritize, the highest return investments on that spend.
Well, and the models of these businesses are also changing as well, as they look at ways for their businesses to optimize, other business flows and rethink how they distribute their product, and even the kinds of products that they provide and methods of distribution. So it changes flows in many ways, and CFOs need to be part of that conversation so that they can accommodate those changes in flows and really do support the business in in a way that is consistent with how the market wants to buy.
That's right. I mean, our customers tend to be pretty large, and so they mostly grow in a material way through acquisition. They grow, of course, linearly and like other companies, but they grow primarily through acquisition. And so now you have processes that are coming from those acquisitions, those new companies. You have new ERPs that are coming online from those new companies that need to be integrated and merged. And almost all of that responsibility falls on to two primary groups, one being the IT organization that has to do the actual integration, and two, the finance suite, who is now tasked with discovery, right, of documentation, of spend of the acquired company. And I think, it's not uncommon for our customers to have 2, 3, 5 ERP systems that they currently have to support. Trying to do that from one team with reconciliation in a consistent manner, closing your books, it's really complicated.
No, for sure. And then add to that, these large global behemoths who are looking to do business in a different way, to add different flows to the business, and you've got additional complexity. What is the one thing that CFOs are talking to you about right now?
Yeah, so finance leaders generally are talking about the sort of labor market is really big for them because they haven't been able to sort of rehire where they thought they could, or replace hire. I think in the finance suite generally, you've got a lot of people that are sort of aging out and taking retirement packages and leaving.
Really?
And I think they're pretty concerned about that because a lot of knowledge goes with that as well.
Yeah.
And so they're concerned about that and retraining. And then they're really concerned in terms of how they're measured as a company by the market itself. So they're thinking a lot about, okay, well, if growth is not the indicator any longer and it's EBITDA, how can I quickly generate EBITDA, and how can we as an organization quickly generate, healthy net margins?
And these are the things that we've talked about today are, I don't want to say quick hits, but sort of quick hits to getting them there.
Absolutely. I mean, we've talked about this before. Every finance software package that you purchase should offer a fairly immediate ROI. And in doing so, it should be, it should be actual hard cash. I think there's historically been a legacy of less work and fewer hours and sort of fuzzy math like this. But the reality is you should be able to prove hard dollars were saved by using a third party tool.
Sounds like that's what you do.
We try to. Yeah, successful so far. And I think that's because our customers expect it, and that's because we expect it internally.
Well, anytime you can save someone, millions of dollars, what's not to love about that?
That's right. Yeah. In fact, we give away the first $1 million for free if you're a 1 billion plus turnover customer. So you don't pay us a nickel until we make you at least $1 million.
That's skin in the game.
That's skin in the game. Provable so far. So far, 100% win rate, but we're willing to be challenged.
All right, Matt, always a pleasure. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.